We dive into a crossover Thursday, this time with Locked On Browns, discussing key storylines, key matchups, and more for the AFC North Divisional matchup coming up next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we return here with another episode of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire. We're here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for tuning in, making us your first listen today. We're free and available on all platforms, including on YouTube. We are back here. It is Thursday, which means we have a crossover Thursday episode. We'll be talking with Garrett Bush of Locked On Browns about this really, I think, important divisional matchup that could spark either the Ravens or the Browns season. Both teams coming in struggling in different areas, but also some of the same ones, like fourth quarter, which has been key for the Ravens in terms of some of their losses, and they'll have to be better in that. So we'll talk with Garrett about all of those things coming up here today on the show. If you want to support the channel here, though, be sure to subscribe on YouTube, follow along in audio form. I really, really do appreciate it. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter at ChaosStriker34 and the Locked On Ravens account at Locked On Ravens. So without any further ado, let's dive into our conversation with Garrett Bush of Locked On Browns for Crossover Thursday. Welcome into a crossover edition of both Locked On Ravens and Locked On Browns. I'm Kevin Ostreicher of Locked On Ravens. With me, Garrett Bush of Locked On Browns. Thank you so much for tuning in today, making both Locked On Ravens and Locked On Browns your first listen of the day. We're free and available on all podcasting platforms, including over on YouTube. And today's episode of both Locked On Ravens and Locked On Browns is presented by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you could have up to 10 times your money on your entry. First time users can receive 100% of the match with $1 for promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code Locked On. And Garrett, this is a game between the 3-3 Ravens, the 2-4 Browns, and an AFC North division that I think many people had a lot of expectations for. And I think one of the biggest storylines of this game is in the North, just how much of a disappointment I'd say the division's been so far through these first 6 weeks.
Yeah, no one seems to want to take the division by the horns. We laughed a little bit before we got on camera and started doing the show. Both the Ravens and the Browns have found ways to lose games down the backstretch. And the crazy part about it is during the first part of the year, when you guys lost to the Dolphins, I said that's crazy. I'll never see that. I ain't never seen that. And usually, some people in Cleveland like to take joy out of something happening bad, especially for the other 3 teams in the division, the Bengals, Ravens, and the Steelers. And I'm looking at it like, well, you can't really get too excited about that because you still have to figure out what's going on in your own backyard. And needless to say, the Jets came back on us in one of the craziest games of all time. We've lost leads against the Falcons, lost leads against the we looked horrible against the Chargers. And then last week, I think it was rock bottom when you get beat by the Patriots and Bill Belichick with a guy named Zappy. He sounds like an old 7-Eleven. Like, I'm going to go to Zappy's and get a case of beer and some hot pretzels. Like, it was just it's horrible.
And I think when you're talking about 2 teams that really need a win, the Ravens and Browns, they really need this game. I think it has the potential to be a spark for a season, especially if they can win it in dominant fashion. But you're mentioning the fourth quarter, Garrett. And yeah, it's been a struggle for the Ravens. They're one of the worst fourth quarter teams in the league right now. I think they're averaging under 4 points a game in the fourth quarter this year. We saw in week 2 against the Dolphins that horrendous collapse where it was just 60-yard touchdown, 40-yard, Tua threw for 469 and 6 touchdowns in that game, which is just unbelievable. And then recently it's been the offense where the offense can't get anything going. Lamar Jackson hasn't played particularly well these past 3 weeks. Some very, I'd say, not great decisions, especially on the interception against the Giants in week 6, where there's a bad snap and instead of just throwing the ball away, he tries to force it into a jump ball with, of all people, Patrick Ricard, who's the fullback. So you have different things going on. I mean, for you, Garrett, what's been the issue for the Browns? Has it been offense? Has it been defense? Has everything, coaching, everything been the reason?
No, I think that the offense, if you look at Jacoby Brissett for the most part, we've known what Jacoby Brissett was. He's a guy that is a game manager. He's able to get you a couple wins, but you can't ask him to win the game for you. If you're going to put the ball in his hands and throw it 30 plus times. That's not going to work out to your advantage. I think the offense, for the most part, if you look at besides last game, PFF had us ranked in the top 5 as offenses. We got a dominant running game. Nick Chubb is a guy who, even though he leads, he's either 1, 2, or 3 in carries in the league. He's still a guy who we want to get the ball to more, especially on the goal line. But then you've looked at that and you juxtapose that between the offense and the defense, and the defense had all these expectations, all these, Jadeveon Clowney, you got Myles Garrett, you were really high on Owusu-Koramoah, the linebacker. You spent a lot of money in John Johnson III. Grant Delpit was a second-round pick. And, of course, Denzel Ward just got the big contract. And what we saw, we thinking this team is going to be a top 5 unit. They had all their pieces coming back. Guys got paid. And this year has just been horrendous. Joe Woods has never been a guy that I've liked on my list of guys that would be heading the defense, because I just think he plays too passive. I think that they also were exposed a little bit in the way they went about building the team. Our defensive tackles, if you look at it, according to Pro Football Focus, all of our defensive tackles are in the hundreds. And I mean, there's only, I think it's 115 or 16 defensive tackles eligible. Ours are in the 110s and 112s. Highest rated defensive tackle is Taven Bryan, who's 89th in the league, I believe. So right now, teams are getting whatever they want to. San Diego Chargers ran out there, and Austin Eckler was averaging the least amount of yards per game. He came out and had a career day at 180 yards on the ground. They still threw the ball. So, and you say, well, maybe that's just the run defense. No, we just mentioned a rookie named Zappy came out there with 118 quarterback QBR rating, and then still threw for 300 on the road against you. So the defense is horrible. They're not tackling well. They're not getting turnovers and not put pressure on people. Clowney is out of this game. A couple other people may be out of this game. So, that's the story of our season. The defense and Joe Woods, what are they going to do, and can they stop anybody?
Right, and I think on the other side for the Ravens, the offense has been, I think, the issue over these past couple of weeks, where they just, I think they've hit a wall, and a lot of people are pointing to Greg Roman, who has been, I think, a staple figure in the news for the Ravens over the past couple of years, because I think of the way the team performed in 2019. They went 14-2. They had the most historic rushing offense in NFL history, and Lamar Jackson was only in his second season, where now you're entering year 5, and Jackson has continued to ascend. He's continued to improve, but the offense, it just feels like, hasn't evolved with him. And so the question now is Lamar Jackson outgrown Greg Roman? Can Greg Roman do anything else for Lamar Jackson? I think Greg Roman, I've been very neutral. I think he's a fine offensive coordinator, but there are flaws. I mean, you go to week 6, the Ravens averaged 8.8 yards per carry against the Giants. They had Lamar Jackson and Kenyon Drake average over 11 yards per carry. And you get to the Giants' 5-yard line, and there are 3 straight pass plays, and you have to kick a field goal because you can't convert. And the Ravens go 1 of 3 in the red zone, and it's the little mistakes. I mean, the Ravens over the first 3 weeks of the season, they were the least penalized team in the NFL. They were really good at not being able to just hurt themselves with those penalties. Against the Giants, they had 10 penalties for 74 yards. It was little things, and they should have won the game because there was a 3rd and 1. There was a quarterback sneak. The Ravens got it. And that was with, I think, 5 or 4 minutes left. They could have just run the clock down pretty much. There's a legal formation.
Kevin, I was confused. We could get to this in another section, but I don't know what was the deal with Hollywood Brown. I didn't. I just didn't. From me looking in, I'm like, okay, he's a 1st-round pick. You guys need receivers. The Ravens have struggled pretty much ever since Anquan Bolton and Steve Smith left up out of here, right? The 2 veterans that they brought in that were really great for those guys. But I just didn't understand what it was with Hollywood Brown, why they would let him walk like that and trade him. I was confused. Maybe you can shed some light on it.
Yeah, I'll definitely. It's really, I think it was his decision. He was, I think, unhappy with the fact that he wanted to be more involved. And not that he wasn't involved, because he obviously he had his career year. Well, this year's his career year. But for last year, he continued to ascend, but he wanted to feel more like he was a part of the winning, where the Ravens obviously over these past couple of years have been a rushing team. So there were days where Marquise Brown maybe only got 4 targets, maybe only got 5 targets. And while he was still getting peppered in some of the other games, and he actually finished with, I think it was the 10th highest targets in the league last year, something like that. He just, I feel like, wanted to feel more involved. He kind of got into that a little bit. And so the Ravens, they have respected those wishes of guys because there have been multiple players who have asked out of Baltimore for the last couple of seasons. Orlando Brown Jr. being one of them, who obviously wanted to play left tackle because of the wishes of his late father, obviously Leonard Brown Sr. So he's in Kansas City. Hayden Hurst wanted to be more of an alpha number one tight end, but with Mark Andrews in Baltimore, that's not going to happen. So he gets traded to Atlanta. That pick becomes J.K. Dobbins. So they were going to honor that. And honestly, it was a shock, Garrett, because they kept it so quiet to the point where I don't think anybody knew about it. And I think if someone did know about it, the deal wouldn't have even gotten done. So they got Linderbaum with that pick. But Marquise Brown, I think, is a good wide receiver, but I think he is like the highest end of a number two, right? He can be a number one, but I think him next to DeAndre Hopkins is a perfect situation because he's so good in that number two role where he can still get his targets, still get his receptions. But in Baltimore, with the way that offense is run, or was run at least over the past couple of seasons, I think he just wanted more opportunities, even though he technically was getting them in Baltimore. The way Arizona throws the ball, the way Kansas City throws the ball, etc., it can be a lot different than maybe what you're getting in Baltimore, which I know Juju Smith-Schuster talked about how he loves Lamar, but he's going to get the opportunities in Baltimore. It's kind of those situations with Marquise Brown.
Yeah, you look at what they're doing out in Arizona and desert. They playing the glorified college football playbook. They got 4 wides, 5 wides. He's out there. He's not going to be blocking downfield. He's going to be catching routes. So I can see where he went with that. So it might have worked for both parties.
Yeah, I think when you get into a situation like that, too, you don't want us to necessarily blow up at the end. Like if you kept Marquise Brown and he continues to be unhappy in his role, how is that going to go? Like, is there going to be something like a fracture within the relationship there? So I think everybody ended it on pretty good terms. I think nobody really had any hard feelings one way or the other. The Ravens do get a first round pick out of it. They actually picked Marquise Brown at 25 in the 2019 draft. They traded him for the 25th pick in the 2022 draft. So now they have Tyler Linderbaum on a rookie deal, who has looked really good. And I think when you're talking about key matchups with the offensive line for the Ravens versus the Browns defensive line, 2 big players, one for each side. We'll get to that in the second segment for key matchups, so be sure to stay tuned. We still have a ton to talk about here on Locked On Ravens and Locked On Browns. But first, I do want to tell you a bit about Blue Nile, and whether you're looking to pop the question, have a milestone to celebrate, or want to let your love sparkle, Blue Nile can help you make your celebrations even more memorable. And they have a lot of different ways they can do that. As an original online jeweler, Blue Nile offers the largest selection of independently graded diamonds and pieces priced significantly below traditional retailers. Blue Nile's help millions of couples create their perfect engagement ring. Their easy online tools that you choose the diamond shape, size, and clarity, as well as the setting style. Blue Nile's bench jewelers will then help you handcraft your perfect one-of-a-kind engagement ring. And you can shop stress-free with Blue Nile's 100% satisfaction guarantee. All Blue Nile orders are insured and shipped for free in discreet packaging. They also offer overnight shipping if you're in a rush. And they have so many good reviews on many different pieces of fine jewelry. So make your moment sparkle with BlueNile.com. Go to BlueNile.com and use code LOCKEDON to save $50 on your purchase of $500 or more. That's BlueNile.com, code LOCKEDON, to save $50 on your purchase of $500 or more. BlueNile.com, code LOCKEDON. We're back. Our second segment of Locked On Ravens and Locked On Browns. Kevin Oestreicher is still here with Garrett Bush. And Garrett, I kind of teased it at the end of the first segment, but I think Ronnie Stanley versus Myles Garrett are 2 players. And obviously Myles Garrett had his situation. Very glad he's okay and everything is good. He re-aggravated the injury against the Patriots. Can you shed light on his status for Sunday?
Yeah, I think he'll play. He's banged up. There's guys, guys inside the organization, some of the sources that I have say, it's tough for him right now. He wants to be out there and he understands that, as a leader, especially the way things went last year, right? Right now you're 2-4. And if you are having any sort of thought process that you're gonna, tread water until, Deshaun Watson gets to come back and play football, you got 2 of the heart of your schedule is right now. So you got 2 division games against the Ravens and the Bengals, and all 3 of the teams need these wins. So he's not going to take himself out, but he reportedly he couldn't put a shirt on after the game. He's the shoulder sprain, and then he also has a bicep injury or whatever. He had 2 sacks last game, but he's actually under some fire here in Cleveland. A lot of people are saying, a lot of people said, hey man, why are you driving that fast? After they found out he was okay, the public sentiment it changes based on how well you're doing on the field. And a lot of people said, hey, we're not going to have Myles Garrett. We lost the game to the Falcons. Now, me, myself, dude, I know you didn't have Myles Garrett, but that Myles Garrett don't have nothing to do with a lot of the other different things that happen on that football field. So right now he's doing, he got 2 sacks. He broke the record. I think that was something that was weighing on him a little bit because he's been in position to do that for a long period of time. He just hasn't either been on the field or been able to get the sack. So, it looks like he had some production last week. He's still banged up. He's not 100%. And I think it really goes to tell the telltale sign because now you have Jadeveon Clowney who, came back not last week, but the week prior. And he's subsequently missed last week, and he probably will miss this week again. So, Myles Garrett is always a guy who is a great rusher on the one left-hand side, but the Browns have always been looking for somebody to put next to Myles Garrett. And Jadeveon Clowney has been the best mix for the Browns just because of the athleticism and ability of Jadeveon Clowney. But the Ravens, Stanley is a high pick for a high first-round pick. He's a guy that, he offers a lot of length. And I think the longer you are as a defensive, as a tackle, the more you can give Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett loves the dip move. He runs and bends as well as anybody in terms from the waist down, able to get skinny, turn the corner, and get sacks. But, one of the things that helps with that is the offensive lineman who has long enough arms that can punch and sit back and not worried about letting Myles Garrett get into his body. And when you have any sort of shoulder, the main thing that you're trying to do is punch and release and get guys off you. That's not going to happen right there. He's not going to be able to do that at a high level. So, he's going to have to rely on speed and leverage, but, it's all about your hands and your punch and your placement. So right now, and Myles Garrett is against the 8-ball a little bit, especially when you don't got Jadeveon Clowney.
Right, and for Stanley in particular, Garrett, it's somebody who did come back a couple weeks ago, so the Ravens are still trying to get him fully back in the offense. They've been super cautious. They went through so many injuries last year. I know, obviously, the Browns did too, but the Ravens with losing guys like Ronnie Stanley and J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards and Marcus Peters, the list, I could go on. We could do a whole segment on the Ravens injuries, but they're being cautious with these guys, keeping them on pitch counts. For Stanley, he's been rotating in and out with Passion McCary, who's their backup kind of like jack-of-all-trades player who can play all across the offensive line. But the thing is, Morgan Moses went down in week 6 for the Ravens with a heel injury. It seems like he's going to be okay. John Harbaugh said nothing serious. So hopefully the hope is he'll get back on the field on Sunday. But if not, it'll be interesting to me to see if the Ravens kind of scrap the whole pitch count thing or go very, very light, because their only other option right now, at least on the roster, is Daniel Faalele, who's a 4th-round pick and held his own. He had to play because the Ravens were down 3 tackles against the Patriots, and he played in that game and played pretty well. But for Stanley, he has shown that when he is on the field, when he's not on the pitch count, he's going to be good to go. He is back. Yeah. The mobility has been there. The power has been there. He's one of the best in both run blocking and in pass protection. So that's a player that really unlocks, I think, a unit, unlocks an offensive line. But Myles Garrett is somebody who I know these two have had their battles before with Ronnie Stanley and Myles Garrett. So I'm intrigued to see that battle. But I think for me, another matchup I'm watching, Garrett, is how the Ravens defense, especially their front 7, is able to, hopefully for the Ravens' sake, not for the Browns, contain Nick Chubb. I think it's a key point in who wins the game, because the Ravens, a key as to why the defense played so well against the Giants in week 6 was because going up against Saquon Barkley, they did their job and they made the Giants beat them somewhere else. Barkley only averaged 3.8 yards per carry. Nick Chubb this year is averaging 5.9 yards per carry. That is an incredible clip. He's one of the best, if not the best, running backs in the league right now. He's running behind an offensive line that is banged up a little bit. I know Wyatt Teller's not going to play this week. I know that's a pretty big loss for them. Yep. But how confident are you that even without Teller, the way that Chubb's playing right now, and even sprinkling in Kareem Hunt, that they can either gash this Ravens defensive front, or do you think that the Ravens defensive front has the advantage now with a guy like Teller out?
Listen, I liked what the Browns, when Teller's in there, it's a different style, right? They're nasty, they're mean. When you get Teller in there, he's one of the best pulling guards. He's the road grader up front. It's really strange because usually you're building your team from the outside in. The Browns are more built from the inside out, and 2 Pro Bowl guards in Batonio and Teller. Jedrick Wills has played better. Out there at left tackle, and Conklin is just getting his feet wet coming back. Missed a lot of last year, all of the off season and 2 days in practices, all that good stuff, coming back from a knee injury. So they're working their way in. And now that you got Wyatt Teller out, And you already had Nick Harris, who was the starting center, went out during during camp. So Ethan Pochich has played well. You look at Hubbard we haven't even seen Hubbard. We've seen more of Hudson, who is our offensive lineman guy coming out of the University of Cincinnati, former defensive lineman at the University of Michigan. He has good feet. We like him. And obviously Bill Callahan does a world-class job of just getting linemen ready. But for me, I would say the Browns are in a little bit of trouble, and that's because I just don't feel like Kevin Stefanski is up for giving the ball to Nick Chubb. There's been a whole big thing in Cleveland, and there's always the faction of people that don't like the play calling, but it's even higher now. Like we've come to unite on one front, like because when you look at it, when you look at Kevin Stefanski and you watch other teams go to what works for them. Other teams go to like, hey, when Derrick Henry was running in Tennessee, you already know who's getting the ball. Derrick Henry was the guy getting the ball. The other day we was playing Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons had guys that just had been moved up to the practice squad. Cordell Patterson went out, who was one of the leaders in rushing before he went out with the injury. And they ran it 13 straight times against our defensive line because we didn't have Clowney or Myles Garrett. And they just basically said, we're not going to run the ball with Marcus Mariota. We're just going to run right at you and see if you can stop it. We didn't stop them. They walked all the way downfield, scored. Falcons ended up winning that game. And I made the comment that Kevin Stefanski, even though he has, two of the best backs in the game, my analogy was, hey, listen, it's like the Targaryens not using their dragons. Why would I am never going to King's Landing with all these other guys. No, I don't need foot soldiers or the Night's Watch or nobody from the wall. Give me 2 dragons and I'm gonna do that forever, right? And we just seem not to use them. I mean, Nick Chubb doesn't get the ball in the goal line sometimes. 3rd and 1, we're confused. He's running play action. So no, I don't think that Kevin Stefanski has the intestinal fortitude to line up and say, I'm going to run this regardless, no matter what the Ravens give me.
And I think some of those frustrations are also in Baltimore. We talked about Greg Roman and just where his play calling can be inconsistent. Situational awareness, I think, is something that Greg Roman has faltered with in certain areas. And also you're seeing with the Ravens, and I'm sure we'll see this on Sunday still because it hasn't gotten fixed, where the play clock will go all the way. It'll go 5, 4, 3, 2. It's the ball either gets snapped right at 1 or there's a delay of game, and it's been frustrating because the Ravens say we got to get the play calls in quicker. We're working on it, and then it doesn't change in a lot of circumstances.
Man, I hate that. There's one thing that I hate is when the coach gets up there, there's a couple things that are hampering, that's holding us back. No, I just get the play calls in faster. We don't need to hear all that. Give me the play. You got to tackle people. If you don't tackle, we taking you out. Oh my gosh, it's so annoying to hear people do stuff over and over and over again and just be like, yeah, we're just hoping to get it. No, that's not how it works.
And it's one thing if, we're 6 weeks in right now. We're still honestly pretty early in the year, all things considered. There's still a lot of football left. But for the Ravens, and I'm sure maybe the Browns have some things that have kind of trickled in from last year, where it hasn't been just a this year thing. It's been a last year thing. It's been a 2 years ago thing. It's been a maybe even 3 years ago thing. And you're kind of thinking, is it going to be a next year thing and a 2 years from now thing and a 3 years from now thing? It's all those things.
See, Kevin, see how the way this things work. See, I'm old. I may look, I'm an old head. I'm 40. So I remember this is how frustrating this is. I remember when the Browns in the 90s would do certain things and they couldn't get clock management and they couldn't throw the ball down the field and play calling was suspect too. And then they up and left. Then they went to Baltimore and figured everything out. They got the jerseys changed. They got they put Ozzie Newsome ahead of everything. And lo and behold, the Ravens started drafting Hall of Famers. I said, what the heck is this? What kind of sorcery is this? They get Ray Lewis and Jonathan Ogden and Ed Reed. And I'm like, this is Jamal Lewis. We got Jamal Lewis late here. He was already 45 when Jamal Lewis got here, and he was still one of the best running backs we had. So I know all about taking L's the same way for 30 years. Yes.
It's the complacency thing for me always, where, you just don't get complacent with doing something, not the right way. And I think Baltimore has been good in certain situations of kind of ushering out the bad, but in others, it's almost like, well, why can't this change or why can't that change? So
Right.
there's a lot.
Right.
These two teams, it feels like we're actually decently similar going into week 7 here, and
Oh,
coming
we
up
are.
in the final segment, we're going to be talking about predictions for this game, final storylines and thoughts. So be sure to stay tuned for that. But first, I do want to tell you a bit about SimpliSafe. And here's a sports analogy for you. When it comes to burglars, your home is like the end zone. You need the absolute strongest defense you can muster. This is why so many people trust SimpliSafe home security. At SimpliSafe, your safety is the only thing that matters. It's cutting-edge technology powered by 24/7 professional monitoring agents who always have your back, so you always know your home is safe. And there's so many people who have positive experiences with SimpliSafe. They help prevent break-ins, and the effectiveness of the technology is really, really supported by the team over there. And also 24/7 professional monitoring. SimpliSafe agents call you the moment a threat is detected and dispatch police or first responders in an emergency, even if you're not home or can't be reached. SimpliSafe blankets your home protection with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door. There are HD security cameras for inside and outside your home. There are smarter ways to detect motion that only alert you when a threat is real, and even hazard sensors that instantly detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. Customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplisafe.com/LockedOnNFL. Save 20% on your SimpliSafe security system when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan and get your first month free. Visit simplisafe.com/LockedOnNFL to learn more. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. Rounding out this divisional crossover here, Locked On Ravens, Locked On Browns, Kevin Oestreicher, and Garrett Bush. And Garrett, I know I said the Ravens and the Browns, fourth quarter issues, some of the complacency stuff, they're pretty similar, but something has to give. A team doesn't have to. Maybe they tie. And I think that's honestly the worst case. I do not like ties, but
Yeah,
I
I
feel
hate
like
ties.
when something has to give in the situation, the Ravens in the fourth quarter, the Ravens with this, but then you have the Browns, who I think, even what Jacoby Brissett at the helm, I think the surprising thing, as you talked about, has been the lack of defensive production, I guess you would call it, when you have so much talent on that defense. Grant Delpit was I thought he was a steal of that draft. And
I did too.
he hasn't been anywhere near the player that many people thought he was. So I think with the way the Browns defense has been struggling, the Ravens offense has been struggling a little bit too. One of those two units is going to get the spark they need, I feel like, whether it is the Ravens offense or the Browns defense. That's one of the key matchups for me. But in terms of predictions, Garrett, do you think the Browns have enough to come into Baltimore to win this game on the road with Jacoby Brissett and the way the defense has been playing? Or do you think that Baltimore is going to be the team that comes on top?
Well, there's three things that Baltimore has going for them, right? They got the fact that A, you're at home. They got the fact that B, the Browns defensive line in the middle, as far as the defensive tackles, is as bad as I've seen in a long period of time. And their linebackers, we went and just made a trade for Deion Jones, Atlanta middle linebacker who was a one-time Pro Bowler. However, he just come off the injury reserve. He does not know the plays. And for a team that has a signal caller like Deion Jones, who is now getting acclimated to a new system that is going to be calling the defense with the green sticker on, it's kind of a little bit of alarming to think that, a guy that don't know the system is coming to a place and now he has to make all the right perfect checks and he's just learning on the fly. I don't like that. And then finally, Lamar Jackson. So here's the thing about Lamar Jackson. He's always killed the Browns, right? If you don't have contain, you don't have gap integrity, and you don't have somebody that is always able to put some pressure on him, nobody is going to be faster than Lamar Jackson. He'll probably be the fastest guy on the field. If he gets in the open, there's nothing you can do. So with Jadeveon Clowney being out, Myles Garrett not even being like 100%, and the Ravens coming in and knowing what they want to do is just run the football, I think it's too much of an advantage for them. Superstar quarterbacks can do certain things. I look at last year. We went to Baltimore. I think Lamar Jackson threw 5 interceptions or something crazy. It was either 4 or 5.
Yeah, I think 4.
He threw 4 interceptions, but we had such a garbage quarterback in Baker Mayfield that we couldn't even. It was almost like you being self-checked. It didn't matter how many turnovers the defense got. It didn't matter any of that because we couldn't score and get on the point and capitalize off those turnovers. And Lamar didn't made enough plays with his legs or his arm to get it done. I think it's more the same thing. If it was a Deshaun Watson football game, I think it might be different. But Jacoby Brissett is shown in the crunch time when it comes down to the come down, 3 interceptions in the last drive to go ahead or tie the football game. I got the Ravens winning this game because I'm not a hater. I watched the game to tell them what it is. I got the Ravens winning this game 31-21.
Yeah, it's interesting because first of all, I remember that game in ball. It was like neither team wanted to keep the football, so I was like, "Here you go. Yeah. No, you have it back. No, you take it back.
There you go, Kevin. Here you go. We much rather you go."
It's like who's gonna actually take control of this game, and ultimately the Ravens did win despite Jackson's 4 interceptions, but. Yeah. Jackson has been their entire offense this year. Really, when it comes down to Baltimore's offense, it's Lamar Jackson, who's obviously like everything. The team goes through him. But then you have Mark Andrews, who's your number 1 pass catcher. He's one of the best, if not the best tight end in the league. Mm-hmm. But then other than that, wide receiver wise, Rashad Bateman did return to practice on Wednesday, which is a great sign. Yeah. But the Ravens did sign, and this might be a blast from the past for you, Deshaun Jackson to the practice squad.
Wow, Deshaun Jackson. How old is he? Like 40 now?
35.
Deshaun Jackson, I feel like he played for the Eagles twice and the Raiders twice.
Yeah, he's been everywhere, and look, he's had a great career. In Philadelphia, he was absolutely electric. But the issue for I think Ravens fans with the signing is that they've gone through the Jeremy Maclins and the Michael Crabtrees and the Sammy Watkins. And so it's like, are we doing this again? Where
the retreads, right?
We've seen the great veteran act. We've seen Derek Mason and we've seen Anquan Bolden and we've seen Steve Smith, but for every Derek Mason, there's maybe 3 Jeremy Maclins. Even Mike Wallace, I love Mike Wallace. I thought Mike Wallace was great, but
I did too.
It's almost like, for people, they want to see Lamar Jackson with his version of DeAndre Hopkins, with his version of Stephon Diggs, his version of DK Metcalf. So the hot name has been DJ Moore, but would Baltimore be able to part with that? Part with the first rounder, part with the second rounder to be able to
Ooh, that's kind of rough. Like, it's crazy because in one sense, you started over a little bit because you got rid of Hollywood Brown. But at the same time, you still kind of want that number 1 receiver. You still want that number 1 flair. So it's like, all right, well, do you give up a number 1 pick? And the Baltimore Ravens and the Steelers traditionally don't give up first-round picks willy-nilly. They just don't be like, hey, let's just sell our franchise. Y'all really don't get down like that. So that is a very tough decision. But DJ Moore can really that could put you over the top in terms of maybe making the playoffs and getting to a playoff berth that you might not have gotten to otherwise.
Yeah, and it's interesting. The thing for me, and I think a lot of people, is that with Bateman going down, everybody moves up a rung on the ladder. So Devin Duvernay's your number 1, who's played well. Devin Duvernay's played really well.
He's played well.
But then your number 2 is DeMarcus Robinson. Your number 3 is James. So what if Duvernay goes down, or even worse, what if Andrews goes down?
Right.
Who are your other? You need to have, I think, more than that. So even if it's not DJ Moore, maybe if it's a rung down, where what does Brandon Cooks look like? What does Curtis Samuel look like? So there are some of these options, but you're right, Garrett, where the Ravens historically haven't given up those high draft picks. They really value the compensatory pick formula has been something they've been all over. They've been one of the best at doing that. So they value the draft picks. So we'll see if this is maybe the time where they maybe go away from their philosophy and say, hey, you know what? We have Lamar Jackson. This is the last year of his rookie deal. He's on the 5th year option this year. Obviously, beyond that is uncertain based off the contract situation, but maybe they want to take advantage. So we'll see. But in this game, the wide receivers, hopefully Bateman is back. Duvernay, I think, will be able to step up with Bateman. And he stepped up even without Bateman on the field. But I think with the way the Browns secondary has struggled this year, with the way the Browns defense, I'd say, has struggled this year, to put it a little better, I think that the Ravens offense, with the way the offensive line has played, I mean, the offensive line has been it's so impressive. Linderbaum's been great. Ben Powers, the left guard, has been great. Kevin Zeitler is the key to consistency on that line. He's been amazing for them.
Another former Brown, we got rid of him. All right, there we go.
And Baltimore thanks you for getting him there. So I think that the way, again, you mentioned the Browns defensive line. I think the way the Ravens offensive line, has been playing. This will be a Ravens win. I'm predicting a big divisional one. They'll move to 2-0. I'm going to say, I'll say 27-23 Ravens. That'll be my prediction.
All right. Well, look. I wish I could say that I had the Browns winning, but I told myself after the Patriots lost, no, I'm not picking y'all until y'all show me something, man. It's the show me state, and I live in Ohio, and I know the show me state ain't what is that? Show me state is what? Indiana?
Is it? I don't know.
Or is it Missouri?
I don't know. Huh?
I should have known this. I should know this.
I'm gonna
Well,
find out.
either way we go, we don't have it. We won't be in Missouri anytime soon. So
It's Missouri. It is Missouri. You got it. You got it. So
yeah,
it is crazy because I think in a game that, again, we're in week 7. This is not like either team loses, they get eliminated from the playoffs. Like, that's it. But I think it goes a long way, especially when you're talking December, when you're talking January. If the Browns go on a run and they rail off 5 straight wins and they're in the hunt in December, what would a loss to Baltimore do? It's the same thing for the Ravens. What would a loss to Cleveland do? So there's a lot that goes into it, but I do know that this division needs a spark somewhere. Some team is going to have a spark. The NFC East has been, I think, what the AFC North was supposed to be this year.
Right. And I always tell people, week in, week out, year in, year out, there's always going to be a team you thought was going to win, they'll lose, and there's always going to be a team that you think will lose or win. And if you want to lose your house, the best way to do it is bet on NFL football games. So, and that has come true here this season.
Well, I think it might be a good omen. It's not a Thursday night game. I think that might be the best omen there is.
Oh, those games are terrible so far. They're like watching paint dry, bro. Like, these are terrible games, man. It's just not. Hey, the thing that the league wants is parity. That's why the NFL is the best league in the world, because every single year they give more people in that fan base an opportunity and a feeling of hope, and that maybe this year is our year, and no one's really eliminated, like you said, to like week 12. So
right.
everyone's still involved, and so it's just a good thing.
Well, one team has to win this game unless there's a tie, as we talked about. And I think something has to give. I seriously think this could be a spark to either team. This could be the spark that the Ravens need, that the Browns need to turn their season around. But we both have the Ravens winning, so we do have that in common here. But that's all I have for you here, Garrett. I appreciate you hopping on, and we'll be talking again. This is just the first of 2 matchups. The Ravens will be traveling to Cleveland late in the year, and I'm excited to talk about that one too.
All right, next time I'll bring Jeff. He'll pull up on us. We'll bring
Jeff will come. We'll have the three-person background, 3-person talk. I'm looking forward to that. But thank you so much for tuning in to both Locked On Ravens and Locked On Browns here today. When we get back here tomorrow on our respective shows, we'll be diving into our end of week Friday content. So be sure to stay tuned for that, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.